Greetings. Welcome to Success with Etiquette. I'm Sean Gilliland. Today's topic, strategies to negotiate with confidence. Our special guest today is Samira Malik, Senior Director, Development Operations for National Public Radio, NPR. Samira has over 20 years of experience with nonprofit organizations. Welcome, Samira. I'm delighted to have you join us to share your expertise and strategies to negotiate with confidence.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can you explain your role as Senior Director at NPR?
Sure. As the Senior Director of Development Operations at NPR, I am responsible for the business operations and support resources for the Development Division. The Development Division is the fundraising arm of NPR. And my particular department, development operations, consists of processes and procedures, database administration, gift processing, data analytics, prospect management, and resources. So all of those departments support the efforts of the philanthropic work of NPR. And so we are resources and partnerships for that entire division.
So you manage a team.
I do. I have a staff of currently 7 people on both the East Coast and the West Coast. We are headquartered in Washington, D.C., but we also have an office in L.A., and so I have a team. Part of my team is also in the Los Angeles office. I do have some vacancies on my team, so that is an incomplete staff, but at the present time, I have 7 direct reports. When I came into this position, I had a staff of 3. And so since I've taken on that role, I have since grown it to a staff of 4 with the possibility of additional growth.
What do you seek in a candidate?
It depends on the position, but primarily fit, personality fit is really huge for my team. Because we work with everyone across the division, you have to have a level of what I call customer service. Sometimes that service is to our customers are internal. And we have NPR within itself is over 1,000 employees. That does not include our member stations, but just within our direct division, there are over 50 people, which are 50 different personalities with whom you have to be able to successfully work with, support, partner, and provide some level of customer service to them or client service to them.
What determines a proper fit?
Skill set, I do have some technical positions on my team. I have a data analyst. That particular position, skill set was extremely important. The technical side of their experience, it was not an entry-level position. And so their skill set and experience was probably equally important as them being a team player. And so it was that particular position was a balance of not one outweighing the other. It was actually both of them were just equally important. There are other positions where there are skill sets that I can teach. So you can, hire maybe a less experienced person. But again, depending on the position, the skill set or the experience is probably very important, as well as being able to provide a level of customer service to our partners.
Speaking of skill set, I'll start with an observation. As an employer and career coach, I've noticed professionals know how to ask the right questions to arrive at a solution that works. But at times, they don't use the same savvy when it comes to negotiating salary. There is this fear, apprehension of articulating self-worth. What is the reluctance to negotiating salary?
I don't know if it's any one thing. I think that my experience has been with some people that we've been taught to not to talk about money. But oftentimes we forget that, especially in an interview when you're going for a job, it is a business. Everything is about money. And so we're comfortable in talking about ourselves and selling ourselves and our skill set. But when it comes to asking what your salary is, or what you're negotiating, becomes hesitant from the candidate because they don't know how to put a value to that. I actually had this situation with one of the team members that I was hiring, where very skilled person, very experienced, but when it came to negotiating the salary, that's one of the application questions, and it said negotiable. And so when we came to the offer, they didn't know how to negotiate. They never put a number to it. And so I think that in that particular situation, it became apparent that we had to start somewhere. So of course we threw out the number that we wanted, and then based on it developed, because based on the benefits, based on the move, because this person was relocating, it then became a conversation where they started to put value to some other things, and it really wasn't the salary. I found this to be an interesting negotiation because they started to negotiate the salary based on the absence of some benefits that we provided that their previous employer provided to them. And so they were able to put a dollar amount to say, hey, my previous employer used to pay all of my health insurance, and now I'm going to come out of pocket participating in one of the plans that you all offer. And they figured out what that was going to cost them, and so they added that back into the salary, which was an interesting negotiation tactic. We actually gave it to them. And so sometimes I think that as candidates, we have to think that the negotiation isn't always on your base salary. There may be some other things that you can negotiate. Because as a business, I'll say this, as a hiring manager, I have a salary range for a position because I work off of a budget. And so there's a number. There's an ideal number for me. There's probably some room for me to negotiate somewhere with that. And so it would behoove you as a candidate to have some knowledge of the value of your position based on the skill set, based on the years of experience that they're asking for, so that you have some level of what that job should pay. If there's any advice that I could give, is never negotiate based on what you feel you're worth, because nobody gets paid what they're worth. I don't feel like I get paid what I'm worth. So it's not about worth, it's a business. It's about what this job is asking of me. What does the market say that this job is valued at? Sometimes it's based on the company, the size, the budget. And so as the same way you've done your research or educated yourself in terms of the job, educate yourself in terms of the business side of that, so that you're able to accurately negotiate a compensation that you could live with.
Highlighting the point you made about salary requirements, should a candidate put a number down or leave it blank? They don't want to price themselves out of a job.
I would say put a number, because one of two things: you don't want to waste your time, and the employer doesn't want to waste their time. If there is absolutely a number that you have to be at, put at least a minimum. If you have room to negotiate, still put a number, because again, the job has already been valued from the business. We have a number. We're not saying we're waiting for this candidate to tell us how much we're going to pay. We already know what we're going to pay for this job. This job is already priced because we're working off of a budget. We're a business. And so this job, before the job announcement has come out, there is a value to this particular job, because we have, as a business, have to be in a position to be able to pay that salary. And so the number's already there. We just have to figure out how we're going to make that work.
So hiring managers expect some pushback in negotiating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If I have a job that we say I offer $95,000 for the job, I know that this is negotiation. This is part of the hiring process. There's some room where the job probably tops out coming in at 105. I probably have some room to negotiate there. If I'm at the top, then that's normally what they say. You know, if your salary if your minimum salary is already pushing you to the top tier of where that job is allotted to be paid, and you've answered that question on the application, that's a conversation as a hiring manager I'm going to have with you at the very beginning. I'm going to say, you know, I saw in your application that your salary requirement is $95,000. That's kind of at the top tier of where I can max out for this position. I have very little room, but we're still interested. And I'm going to get that out the way and before we even get to an interview. That's a screening question, so that if you are stuck at, based on your living expenses, you have to be here, you have to be at this number, I'm going to let you know that we can continue the conversation, but we're pushing the max right here for this position. So I probably can't move much further than that. I can meet it, but I probably can't move much further than that.
So strategy number one is to know your number.
Know your number. Know your number. I know my number. I know my number for every position. I will say that for all positions, especially a new position coming in, I try not to have a candidate at the top tier of where a job is going to max out in terms of pay, because you always want room for growth. There's maybe an opportunity, unless I know as a manager that this job can then turn into something else, meaning I can restructure the job, and maybe I'm hiring for a director, but in my forecast in terms of me developing my business, I know what our 5-year strategic plan is. I'm already thinking 2 years from now, this position could probably move into a senior director position. And so it's okay that I bring them in at the top tier, because if the performance is there, the experience is there, I can hire at the top tier because I'm fully expecting for this person to be able to promote up out of this job. But those are business decisions. Those are things that as a manager, you already know because of the forecast of the business that you're aware of. The same confidence you have in interviewing for the job and talking about your experience and how you're capable of doing that job, have that same level of confidence in asking for your salary. It's no different. It's no different than any other interview question that is asked of you.
Do you find that men and women negotiate differently?
In my experience, yes, men and women negotiate very differently. The men that I've hired have come in with a level of assertion and certainty in terms of what they're expecting. And there has been a level, I'm not going to say a level of timidness, but just not the same level of confidence that that the men candidates that I've interviewed have been. Men, I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure if it's the inequality of pay that women have, and so where there's a hesitancy in us having those conversations, we have to be taught or educated how to do that. But in my experience in hiring, and I have a very diverse team of both men and women. I've hired both, and the men that I've hired have come in with absolute certainty. And there have been instances where the men are so certain that the negotiations are just stuck. Like this is what it is. Like this is where I have to be at. And I've seen more flexibility from the women.
I read an article in Forbes that stated one problem women have when negotiating is the cultural perception that they are caregivers or that they should be communally oriented. So women should use this to their advantage and have a communal motivation for asking for more. For example, a man negotiating salary can talk about his competencies. What women need to do is yoke their competencies with a communal concern. By doing so, you change the conversation. It's not just what I can do for you, but how I can help the organization and the business community.
That's interesting. I think that we oftentimes use this is me professionally, this is me personally, and it took a mentor to help me to realize that we're one person. And so thinking of the woman as the caregiver, that's naturally who we are in our creation. So it would only make sense that there's an element of that to us professionally. We're not three different people. We may have three different roles, but we're still the same person in every role. And some of that carries over. We just have to know how to utilize it in such that it can adjust accordingly to the role in which we need it to serve its purpose.
You mentioned the value of a mentor. I've had the benefit of mentors' wisdom and experience to help me grow in my career and business. How important is mentoring to grow and develop talent?
It's essential. I only got into development operations through a mentor. I had been in the nonprofit world for, at that point, maybe 7, 8 years before I encountered working for this young lady. She's actually much older, but she could have been my mom, and had that role of taking on the responsibility of being a mentor to me and help me think through a career path of how there are so many, because I worked in the world of development. And oftentimes when people think about philanthropy, they think about fundraising. And so it wasn't until I met her and she opened up my eyes to say, there's a whole side of fundraising that has absolutely nothing to do with asking for money. Because as much as I love nonprofit and philanthropy, I'm not a fundraiser. I could never ask for money because I just don't like to do it. But what I do like to do is to create results. And so to create partnerships and be a part of the success of something. And so that's when the world of operations opened up to me. And she said, there's a whole path to this. Think about before the fundraiser gets to the place of asking for money, there is so much that has to go into place to make them successful before they're even there. I mentioned prospect management as being one of the areas that my team is responsible for, and that's part of fundraising. And so managing the prospect, uncovering new prospects, doing research for them, helping develop relationships, helping develop interest, storing that information, which is the database team that I manage. So I am only sitting here today in this position is because of the use of a mentor prior to me. And so I now have implemented an actual mentorship program for my division because I know the success and the importance of professional growth and trajectory, and that can only come from experience. We have every level of professional here. We have millennials, we have NPR has an intern program, so you're always getting kids straight out of college who are excited. And again, I feel like there's a responsibility that we have to mentor them, to help them figure out what their professional growth opportunities, wingspan can be. And again, that's only because a mentor did that for me.
Can the way you dress boost your confidence when negotiating?
Absolutely. I can only say this from the perspective of being a woman. I know how it feels when you feel good about yourself. When you're dressed well, when you physically feel good about, the clothes on your back, your appearance that day, changes your attitude. It changes the way you walk, how, you sit up a little bit straighter. And so, will change your negotiation because there's a level of confidence. It's one of those intangible things, that is I use when I'm looking for candidates and you're interviewing, because the interview process is just that. It is to uncover those intangible things, the things that are not on your resume. Because we read the resume, we know what your experience is, we know what your background is. The interaction and the interview is to uncover those intangible things. And so your attire is part of that intangible thing that's going to make you feel good about yourself and give you the confidence to negotiate successfully.
So, what are your top 3 strategies to negotiate with confidence?
The number one, know the salary, the market range for your position. there is always a range for a position, and it varies based on locality. So what a data analyst at a mid-sized firm in DC is getting paid can be very different from a data analyst in Montgomery, Alabama, the metropolitan area versus a much smaller area, the size of the company. So educate yourself and know what that job has a medium range, if nothing else, the medium range for that job. Because most businesses have priced their positions. They don't just pull a number out the air and say, yeah, that sounds good. They've done their research to price the position. You do the same. It's your job that you say you want. It's your job that you say you're capable of doing. So you need to know that. So first and foremost, know what the position should pay. Know the things. Secondly, know the things outside of what you want your annual salary to be, where you can and will negotiate. Again, a signing bonus, leave, know the benefits. When you get to the benefit portion, oftentimes a company cannot do anything about their insurance plan, but maybe there's some compensation that you can ask for at the time of that offer that can offset whether it be additional expenses that you may incur. Ask about your performance review. There is, and it's not just unique to NPR. I know that there are other businesses where you do an annual performance review. Oftentimes there's a certain percentage or range in which your salary can increase. And depending on when the hire happens, you may or may not be eligible for that increase that year. Case in point, if you're hired July 1, after July 1 of a particular year, you may not be eligible for an increase that year. So you might start negotiating that cost of living increase that you may not get, because you might have to go a full calendar year before you're able to have any salary increase. So know where you can make some negotiations. And thirdly, just simply believe in yourself. Again, the negotiation is absolutely no different than any other interview question. It's as simple as, tell me about yourself. You can answer that question. You can answer the salary question.
Thank you, Samira, for your time and sharing valuable strategies to help us communicate effectively our worth to negotiate with confidence.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Have you negotiated for more money? Comment below and tell us all about it. Have a great day.